Hi, welcome to Love and Life Liberation, where our podcasts are raw, real, and unfiltered. We have here today Lorna, Gale, okay? And I'm going to be sharing a little bit of information about her so that you can get to know what it is that she does a little bit. So Lorna is the Priestess Domme, sex and spirit alchemist of the feminine-led life. Somatic Sexologist, story unweaver, an intuitive energy healer whose work meets clients at the intersection of sexuality, spirituality, and embodied truth. With more than 25 years of experience holding safe and sacred transformational spaces, she supports women who feel trapped by expectations and are ready to reclaim their power, erotic aliveness, and authentic leadership. Her work invites a return to the feminine led life, rooted in the body, guided by truth, and free from inherited silence. Lorna also walks with men who are ready to let go of the performance of masculinity and step into the deeper truth of their hearts. Men who long to serve, support, and move in harmony with women without shame. In her spaces, these men discover that surrender, devotion, and alignment are pathways to their fullest strength, their gifts, and their wholeness. A bondage master, trainer, and frequent guest on podcasts, radio, and TV shows, Lorna's deepest work lives in the body, where real homecoming and harmony begins. So, Lorna, um, I'm going to go ahead and start. So today, more people are aware of the divine feminine, but 25 years ago, that wasn't the case. What inspired you to go down that path?
Hi, Swan. It's such a beautiful time to be here with you, and thank you so much for this conversation. I love this question because it is so true that those years ago it would not have been. What brought me to here? My own journey, it was not a journey that I had gone looking for. It was simply something that unfolded on my path, and coming from a place of a beautiful family, very conservative religious home, this idea of sexuality and spirituality. Well, sexuality belonged in a certain context, and anything else was wrong, bad, sinful, shameful, and the whole spirituality. So, this idea of sexuality and spirituality coming together in a harmonious, natural way was not on my radar. And from a place of being very disconnected from my sexuality, my journey took me to the gift of a health crisis, which started my spiritual journey. And then when I realized I was just so disconnected from my sexuality and how that was causing tension and disconnection within my marriage, and a marriage of 30 years, it really gave me the invitation to start to find out, who am I as a sexual erotic being? And so different courses and trainings and retreats that I went on. And in there, I met myself in the mirror, literally and figuratively. And in that moment, moved through this place of feeling the shame and the disgust and the self loathing that came up. It even took me to a point of existential shame, the shame that I even existed. And it seemed like once I could touch down into that darkest places, it's like I could come up and start to connect with myself in a different way. And that's where this journey, as I call that, my midlife sexual awakening, where all of a sudden, from the shame and disconnection, it was like life itself was erotic. And I talked and experienced, talk about sex with such ease, because I see it from a natural part of who we are, as well as connection to the divine.
Oh, that's so funny because my second question was, can you share with us some of the trials and tribulations that you encountered in your journey? And you answered the personal one. How about the professional one?
Great question. I had the incredible joy and privilege of being a stay-at-home mom. We had two beautiful daughters, and I got to stay at home with them. And in the times of being a parent volunteer, teachers would always say, "Go be a teacher. You should be a teacher." And no, no, no. And at one point, after several months, I thought, I wonder if I could be. So a couple of months later, I was actually enrolled in our local university taking my teacher training. I taught in school for several years. And then with the gift of the health crisis, where laryngitis multiple times in a short period of time, which isn't really great for a teacher, it felt I need to start to explore. And so started to explore and started to take off, as I say, take off the blinders from how I had seen myself and saw life. And and that's where I became, I encountered energy work. And so I took that training, and they also said, "Hey, come and be a teacher for us." So, okay, I did that. And then with my midlife sexual awakening, they, I said, I want to bring this work to Canada, the professional training that I was in. So my journey, and when I took that training to be a practitioner, they said, would you be our teacher for it? So being a teacher has been something that has evolved. And I've started to realize that at one point where I thought, oh, I can't be a teacher, realized, oh, that's actually the one of my greatest gifts is being a teacher. And while I can teach people things or ways and looking at things, my greatest passion is supporting people of realizing what's within them. And that's what Galileo's quote is. We can't teach anyone anything. We can only help them to discover what's inside. And that's what I love doing, is supporting people in finding out beyond their stories of what they've been taught or what they've been told to believe, or this idea that they have to look outside of themselves for authority and partner, permission, validation. It's come back home and find out what's really true, what's that truth within, and to live from that place.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree. And I definitely understand where you're coming from because I feel the same way. Because, growing up, we've been taught a certain way of looking at things or doing things, and then I know that for me, once I started awakening, I realized, well, in the beginning, I would seek validation, for approval, for love, for affection. And then, you actually, I think for me, I'm just speaking personally, I reached a point where I realized that I was actually abandoning myself. You know what I mean? And the person that I was doing the biggest disservice to was me. And I actually learned that when it came to answers, it's actually internal because we actually have everything we need within our DNA, our blueprint, which is unique to every person. And I love the fact that you actually allow people to step into their true authentic self, which is, I love it. That's beautiful. And I'm sure a lot of people have benefited from the teachings that you've shared throughout the years.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, and it has been. There have been people that will say to me, like, "Wow, I've never shared this with anybody." So I create this space where people can show up. There's no shame. I actually, um, soon after my sexual awakening, I got this. What came through was this awareness of, um, wow, the way that we do food, the way that we view food, the way we talk about it, learn about it, if we could do that as naturally around sexuality, it would just, so it just one of those things as well that made sexuality just so not natural, because I see it from that lens of, well, yeah, age appropriate. We learn, we explore. And so to be able to look at that, and I'm really grateful for that opportunity to be able to hold that space for people that when they share things with me, they're thinking about this, and definitely stating that for me, it's that whole thing about consent, like fully consensual, and not involving children, because that's not from a place of consent. So with consenting adults, it's to be able to have this place where, what do you want to explore, what are you curious about, and how do we tap into that? So when people find out that when they share things, well, I'm thinking about this or I'm that, it's kind of like, cool. They're kind of, really cool. I wonder what it means for you. What's your journey in that? So that's one of the things that I love, is supporting people in really, as you say, coming back into their own truth, their own authenticity, and letting it be their path without shame.
That's wonderful. So between in compare so 25 years ago versus now, what are some of the differences that you've noticed in regards to people's perception of sexuality?
Such a great question, Swan. In some ways, there are the blinders are still on in many ways. This is the way it is. There's a right way and there's a wrong way to look at, to experience, to talk about, to view sexuality. And other ways, people are saying, it's not like we've been taught, or it's starting to look at things in a wider, bigger, deeper perspective. And I would certainly say that that has been my experience because I was so this is the blinders. Save yourself for marriage. Be a good girl. And how many of our listeners can relate to that, right? Of be the good girl, and anything else is wrong, bad, sinful, shameful. It's kind of like, really? Really? Why? Says who? And I want to bring into here as well, Suan, the idea of story. One of the things that I use as a title, just as a pointer, is that of a story unweaver. As a child, I read stories prolifically. I loved reading. Whenever I could have a book, I would read, read, read. When I was teaching in the school system, I got to teach children and kids how to write stories. And as entrepreneurs, we hear about, tell your story. Your story is what helps people to connect to you. And so when I look at our story about sexuality, I look at it through the lens of story as well. Is any story has a starting place of the character, and then they start on their journey of they're on a quest, they're on a something, and then obstacles come up, challenges show up. There are adversaries, these different pieces and people that are going to make things challenging, these ideas that they have about themselves that they have to overcome. And at some point in that story, they have a different perspective, or there's a turning point, and then the resolution. When we look at our story around sexuality, I look at one of the stories that I love to speak about, that I think a lot of us maybe have heard, that we can relate to without it being a personal story, is that of Hansel and Gretel. So how many have heard the story of Hansel and Gretel, right? And a beautiful little fairy tale, and yet there's powerful. One of the versions talks about they left the breadcrumbs along the way, and they went out and had their adventures. When it was time to come home, they couldn't find their way because the birds and the animals had eaten the breadcrumbs. So they were lost. In another version, it's the version I like to talk about and to use, is that of they dropped pebbles along the way, went out and had their adventures. And when it was time, they simply followed the pebbles home. Well, using the story analogy of this is that home, we can talk about it from a personal perspective. We can talk about it as our spiritual, energetic aspect. We are there in our wholeness. And we want to have this experience of what's it like to be human? What's it like to feel that we are challenged? How do we hide the truth and the wholeness of who we are? And so each trauma that we have, each time where we have something, it helps to create this place of shading and shadowing and hiding our wholeness. I call it, we're being humanized. We are in these places taking the true essence of who we are that just is. We put labels on it. Like, here's a dog, here's a cat, here's a mom, here's dad. Hi, you're a baby. We start to label our emotions, and every one of those is creating a sense of humanizing us. And the traumas that happen where, oh, that hurt, I was offended, or somebody betrayed me, or the different things that happen to us in terms of sexual things that happen to us without sexual consent, things that happen to children. And all of those things start to disconnect us from our sense of self, our sense of our wholeness. And we start to disconnect even from feeling. And those are like pebbles along the way. And at some point, when we're ready to look at a journey of who am I? What's all this about? I want to be having this healing experience. We start to find those pebbles, those places where memories start to come up, or where we're feeling something there, or there's this thing about I would love to experience and explore something, but I've been taught I shouldn't. Good, let's go there because that's one of the pebbles. And as we follow those pebbles home, we are not just following our way home, but we're opening the pebbles to find the truth and the wholeness and the energetic aspect that's been hidden. And it's sort of that sense of reclaiming it. Okay. And we come back more and more into a remembrance and experience of our wholeness. And so sexuality plays a powerful role because it's that portal from spirit, our wholeness, into what seems to be separate. Here's me, here's other, here's male, here's female. And it's this quest to come back into a remembrance, a connection to, and even that thing of how do we find our way back into connection to divine. If I'm so shamed, if what I'm doing, if sex is so shamed, then it's no wonder we even have this sense of doubting ourselves because I came from sex. So if sex is shameful, it says something about me. There's something wrong with me because that's what I came from. So it's these story elements where we hide, disguise, camouflage, put up the danger signs as ways to hide our wholeness for this human journey. And we follow them back home into a remembrance, feeling at home in our body and having those experiences.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing. It definitely has a resonance to it that is, uh, it's interesting. There is so much suppression, oppression within our society, and there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of disconnection because a lot of people don't have an open heart. Because to have an open heart means to be vulnerable, and in order to actually tap into, so your sexuality is not, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but for me, I see it not just in the bedroom, but I actually see it as a way of being, as creating. And when we give birth, it's not necessarily to a child, it could be to a project because it's an energy, what is it, sacral, sexuality and creativity. And if you're able to access that part of yourself, it actually empowers you to step into who you are even better. And that's the piece that I've been learning for me to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, thank you so much for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I love
my
that.
next question, are there common threads, themes, or challenges that you find working with your clients?
Mm. There are. And this one actually taps back into even what you had just shared, that aspect of that that creative life force aspect. 16 years ago, at the time of my midlife sexual awakening, there was a quote of Audre Lorde, and it has been central to as a compass for me all these years. She says and the word erotic for me was actually kind of it felt dirty, it felt shameful, it felt like a dirty old man and objectifying women, and so I was very closed off to it. Her quote changed that. Um, we tend to think of the erotic as a quick, tantalizing sexual arousal. I speak of the erotic as that deepest life force energy that moves us in a fundamental way. So, a very different feel, a very different trajectory and movement with that. So, that taps now into what I see, the patterns, if you will, of people who show up to me. Women primarily who show up to work with me are wanting to reconnect with their bodies and their sexuality. And how does that impact for some people if they're in relationship? Because there's some disharmony that's happening there. But they come because they want to connect to their body and their sexuality. Men who arrive to me are saying, I want to be able to just feel, and I want to be the best that I can be for my partner, my wife, my girlfriend. And I start to see that over and over and over again. And where it came to is actually to look at things that my work has come to empowering women and training men. And in that, what it allows is women to really connect into their wisdom within, to connect to that creative essence. Many of my clients, I think of a world renowned artist who came to me with the idea. She was well into she was a senior woman. She came to me, please help me shut this down. It just keeps impacting and getting in the way of what I'm trying to do with my work. After one, I said, sure, I'll help you shut it down. And she said, actually, after one session, she said, why would I want to shut this down? Because it could not be shut down. In fact, she got out of that session and she said, why would I want to shut this down? Help me to do it. She went on to infuse that erotic energy into her paintings, as she would actually be tapping into doing her personal erotic practice while she was painting, because it brought such life to it. Another young woman who was a writer, that she thought connecting through her personal erotic practice was actually going to be helping her to connect with her partner more. It actually showed up in how she created her food, how she enjoyed her food. And as a writer, she became even more prolific. She started getting more requests and she got rewards for it. So when you talk about that creative aspect, absolutely. So that's the patterns that I've started to see is people, women connecting to their body, their sexuality. How does that show up? How does that help them be authentic? How does that help them to move beyond? I can feel a sneeze coming up.
Bless you.
This part about, I love the sneezes of things are letting go. But this aspect of women who are ready to be authentic, they're no longer, I don't know that they were ever content. They're no longer willing to settle for being silent, to being authentic, to being inauthentic. They want to truly be connected to their wholeness, however that's expressed. For women, they maybe are never in relationship, so it's not about that, other than in relationship to themselves and their wholeness. So how do they connect to that? How do they reclaim their voice, their choice, their leadership? So what I talk about is women reclaiming their power, their sexuality, and their leadership. For men, it's supporting men in coming into an honoring of that place of service and devotion that they have been taught, yeah, you're sexual, but don't feel. And they suffer. Women have been taught, you're emotional, but don't feel sexual. They suffer. When we can reconnect to sexuality and the emotion, that ability to feel emotion and the physicality, it's what allows us to become more whole within ourselves in relation to ourselves, our wholeness. And I look at, again, what I've been shown, what came over again, over and over again with when you asked about that pattern that I show up. See, it's when women reconnect to their body and their sexuality, it's like they rise. And in that rising, it creates this space for the men to actually sink into service and support, which is the heart of men is to serve. And it's not to say that that men and women don't each have the masculine and feminine. No, it's not. We each have that wholeness within, beyond the labels, beyond needing to call it feminine and masculine. It's actually, we're in this process of letting go of the labels, coming back into that wholeness that cannot be defined by words.
Yeah, that self-judgment piece. What just kind of came to me is, women are more likely to come to you than men. And my question is, the men that come to you, that are not in a relationship versus those that are in a relationship, what are some of the differences between the two?
Mm, it's a great question. There are some men who arrive to me. They are in relationship, and maybe their partner doesn't know it, or their partner does know. I support people in connecting with themselves and let that be that place, and then how it ripples out. A big part of it is they want to come into this place of, as I say, with the men, to be able to feel. And sometimes that feeling means letting go of control, because as long as we're staying in control, it gives that ability to not feel the emotion. So it's allowing them to feel the physicality, to feel emotion that arises. There's a lot of men that they're so, they get hardened because it they've been taught, don't feel, don't be a sissy. What are you, a wimp? That aspect where we have connected this idea that being soft, feeling, being emotional is weak, and that it's feminine, therefore feminine is weak. And so they're disconnected from that aspect of themselves. So I have this incredible privilege of helping men to feel. I've had multiple men who weep in session when they can finally start to feel things that they have shut off, and yet their body tells the story because of illness, because of disconnection in their own relationships with themselves, certainly, and any relationships they're in. So I support that, and this aspect of men who are in relationship, is I support them in. And it comes back to that piece about training men. And train means to bring into harmony with that strongest force, that strongest energy. Like clocks, if they're all, moving in different time, the one with the strongest energy, the strongest rhythm and the beat, all pretty soon, all the clocks are moving in time. And so too with men, is giving them that place, that energy to entrain to. And sometimes that's helping them to let go of them being in control. And I think of one man who came to me for sessions to reconnect to be able to feel. And things shifted where he wanted to be the best that he could with his wife. So we had this dialogue going on with his wife. She would send me notes. His job is to load the dishwasher, but he's not doing that. And so I would do some reinforcement to help him to remember, this is what you want to do. Go and be the best you can be. And so it's that entrainment is supporting men in letting go of this idea that they need to be in control, or that there's something weak about being in support to the feminine, to their wife, to their girlfriend. So that's a part of the aspect that I do. And there's just so many men that are just longing to be seen, and knowing that being in service and being there as an empty vessel is a place of strength, not of weakness.
Oh, I love hearing that, that men are starting to connect with the feminine parts within themselves. And I agree with you in so many ways. They have been taught, that it is weak to be able to express their emotions or their feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So it's so nice to hear that we're moving towards a world where things are opening up for them too, and not just for us. Okay. So if I wanted to explore this topic with myself and with a partner, what's the best way to start?
I love what you said. Start it with yourself. That would be key. Start it with yourself. There are various ways to do it. Some of the ways that when people start to work with me, I always start with talking about consent and finding out. And again, when we think about consent, we think about somebody else and saying yes or no. What do I want to do? I take them back into, what does consent? I call it the compass of consent. What does it feel like inside when you are in alignment and living from your own truth? So I take people through that. And so starting with yourself is, be curious. What is it that I like? And I'm not talking just about sexual things. That's a great place. But as long as we compartmentalize and separate sex from the rest of our world, and I'm not talking about having the act of sex. I'm talking about a bigger picture, that erotic energy, that sexual erotic energy. As long as we compartmentalize it, that, oh, it belongs in the bedroom, it's with somebody else, then we shut down, as you mentioned, that creative energy, that aliveness of all of life that is there. And so I encourage people to find different ways to find out, what is it for you? What is true? What do you like? And not seek the need to have that validated or have permission. And here's an example. You think, how does this connect? I'll share it. One time, quite some time ago, I went to a fast food restaurant and I said, I would like a cheeseburger. No, sorry, I'm going to say that again. I went to the counter and I said, can I have a cheeseburger? And the young man on the other side of the counter looked at me. He paused and he said, you can have whatever you want. You're the customer. That was probably about 20 years ago, and it changed my life in the sense of how recognizing how often I was asking for permission. How many in our listening audience can relate to that idea of asking? So there's
Yeah.
something to do as simple as that, is instead of asking, can I have this? Can I have that? Can I have going to the coffee shop? Can I have this drink? Rather than that, change it and say, I would like. Or today I'm going to enjoy such and such. And to be able to really own what we like, own what we want, own our pleasures, own our desires, to express those. That's one of the things to do. So I would say, in that very thing, we're owning our voice and our choice. Another one is as simple, and I'm offering these because you think, well, what does it have to do with sexuality? Everything. Because if I can't say to somebody that I don't know, when I'm asking for what I want to eat or saying what I want to eat, if I'm always asking for it, then I'm saying that what I want is only dependent on somebody if they will give it to me. It's like that's what validates it, rather than saying, I would like a cheeseburger. Oh, sorry, we don't have cheeseburgers. Does that negate what I want? No. But I was able to voice it. So get into the practice of saying, I would like, or today I'm going to enjoy such and such in those day-to-day things. So if and when it comes to the bedroom, I would like, or today I'm going to enjoy laying back, or today I'm going to enjoy you lay back. Those kinds of things. So practice it in ways that seem to be non-sexual, so that it ripples into and it ripples out through all of life. Another one is in terms of touch. We often have this idea that touch that is erotic and sexual has to do with the genitals, and it has to do with sexual experiences. I'm saying, be your own best lover. Give yourself the touch that you would like to have somebody else to give you. Don't wait for somebody else to be there, because other than that, you are literally dying for the touch, as if you have to depend on somebody else. Be your own best lover. And again, I'm going to give an example that it's not sexual in nature, and yet it is absolutely a part of that erotic energy. Here's an example. We all shampoo our hair, and we, shampoo, scrub, 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 da, 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 rinse, 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 rinse. I call that functional touch. It's necessary. It serves a function. What if we shampoo your hair, or while you're shampooing your hair is actually to slow down and feel that touch on your head? Oh, it feels good. Well, that's kind of weird that I would touch myself in a way that feels good. Why? Why have we naturalized or made it seem normal that we will wait for somebody else to touch us, but we won't give ourselves that own touch? Find out what feels good. My first husband, 5 years into our marriage, I had not had an orgasm. And he was trying and trying and trying. And that's what I speak to, the heart of men. The heart of men is to please, provide, and protect. That heart of service. How can I be there for you? He said, Why don't you find out what makes you feel good so you can tell me? I didn't know. I had been taught, save yourself for marriage. I did. I was a good girl. And in doing that, I had no concept of exploring myself because, my body is mine, is not mine. My sexuality isn't mine. It belongs to the marriage. So I did not connect to my own sexuality. I'm inviting people, encouraging people, shouting from the rooftop, be your own best lover. Find out what makes you feel good. Slow down your touch. Sitting in a restaurant, dare to touch yourself on your palm of your hand. Give yourself that touch that you thought and you were taught needed to come from somebody else. Find out what makes you feel good for your own pleasure. And then, if and when you're with somebody else, you can say, you know, what I really like is.
Yeah, you're making a really good point. You know, we've been conditioned to be, go, 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 and to actually step back and to be in the moment means to actually engage all of your five senses. And it could be simple things like you said, shampooing in the shower, or even putting lotion on in the morning as you get ready for the day. Because when you take that moment to step back, you're actually reconnecting with yourself, and it allows you to set the tone for, that day, whatever is going to happen next. You're actually going to be more in the body. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that with us. And maybe that's something that other people will start, making the time for, or, bring it into their daily routine.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, okay, let me see here. Okay, so is there a difference for men for being male or being female
In
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 regards to connecting with yourself? I know
mm,
you can do that too, but are
mhm.
there other steps that they need to take? That are different from females.
That's such a beautiful question, Swan. You know, I would say that while we have different hormones, going through different bodies, that type of a thing. So there's that aspect of of the physical experience, and yet we are all sexual erotic beings. We all have the capacity to feel, as you talked about, the five senses. That we all have emotions. We all have that, and so it seems that in my practice, that where it's different is the conditioning, the beliefs that we encounter on our way to that connection to ourselves. So where, and again, I'm speaking generally, primarily women have, when they've been taught not to be sexual, the idea of self-pleasuring and what I call personal erotic practice is sometimes can be foreign. Whereas men, it's sort of a natural thing. That's what they've been doing that since childhood. But the emotional part, toughen up. Big boys don't cry. So we are really moving against a different tide, if you will, of what we encounter, of how we've been taught to disconnect from different aspects of ourselves. So it's, and I say that generally because many women have been sexual, but they've been taught there's still some shame around that. And they have, from their own wounding, been taught to perform sexually and shut down their emotions. So that's why I say generally. But I would say to look at how do we reconnect to our sexuality, not in a sense of just getting off. Oh, I'm feeling tension. I need to have a release. What about connecting to ourselves instead of having the goal of an orgasm or an ejaculation, because an orgasm and ejaculation are not the same thing. They often happen at the same time. So we think, oh, it's the same thing. They're not. So how can it be that you can actually prolong that? Take off the goal or the agenda of having a release. How much do you dare to feel? How much can you feel without even touching genitals? Let your whole body be an erotic sexual instrument and explore that. So with the men and the women, I often, and this was a part of my journey, and I know through my talking and my work with women and men that this is common. It was my experience as well. When we are used to having this trajectory of arousal, and it's common for men: build, 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 poof, sudden drop. And so with my husband and myself at the time when we were married, it was this: I would try to build, 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 and there was no poof. And so we thought, okay, well, I guess I just lost it, somewhere I lost it. And so, that would be the night that he would roll over and fall asleep. I would roll over and cry myself to sleep because I knew that there was so much more, but I didn't know how to access it. It was not until we were divorced and I was in my own journey of my exploration and in the trainings that I took and my awakening is realizing, oh, there's upregulation, build, 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 and then downregulate, relax, build and relax, build and relax. And that's what allows it to build and to feel, because the more relaxed you are, the more you'll feel. And when we tighten up, we often hold our breath. When we breathe, we shut down that ability to feel. So breathe, build, relax, breathe, feel it all. How much do you dare to feel? So when I'm working with men, when they're on that trajectory, I say, okay, when you get, if 10 is ejaculation, 9 is the point of no return, tell me when you're at 8. And I do this whether I'm working with people in person or online. Okay, tell where you're at when you get to an 8. And then, okay, breathe, spread the energy, let it go. Let your whole body feel that energy. Okay, we build again. I teach men how to relax, to breathe, to let their whole body be a part of this. And so that's one of the ways. With women, it's supporting them in similar way to feel, to where they've shut down. Okay, breathe, sink into the safety of their bodies where they can feel. To let the emotion that they have shut down, let that out. So sometimes there are crygasms, sometimes there are laughgasms, sometimes there's different ways of connecting with their bodies. So a variety of ways that happen, and I don't have a cookie cutter way of working with, okay, you're somebody with these genitals, whether you identify as woman or you have these genitals and you identify as man, or you're trans, or whatever gender you ascribe to. I don't do a cookie cutter thing. It's what's your journey, because that's where we're going to start. Let's find out, where are your desires? Where are your pains that you have encountered? Where does it feel like you're shutting down? Where you feel like you want to explore? What's feeling alive for you? That's where we start right now for you.
I love that you include everyone in the journey, whether or not you're male, female, or trans, and however you choose to identify yourself. You make it all inclusive. But what kind of came to me was communication, and trust in the relationship. You know, to be able to be honest with your partner, there's a certain vulnerability that comes into play. I guess what's coming through is, what are some of the techniques that you use to help overcome it? It doesn't matter whether it's a male or a female, some tools that they can use to overcome that hurdle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what another. I love your questions, Suan. Thank you for these. And it really opens up a space for our listeners to really feel into, because these are questions that people have. It's this idea of, well, I don't have a partner, and somehow there's this idea that there's something wrong. Well, I should have a partner, and the aspect of communication and that vulnerability. The way that I look at it, the way that I live it, the way that I teach it is that it all starts within, that honesty is an inside job. And if I can't be honest with myself, it's hard to be honest with a partner. And so sometimes when there is safety, when there is this place where in a relationship that I can show up and be vulnerable, then it certainly facilitates that ability to be honest with oneself. And so to be able to look at identifying identifying what is there, whether it's a pain, whether it's traumas, whether it's desires. It starts with being honest rather than recognize it and shoving it down or denying it because, well, I shouldn't want to do that. It seems shameful. It's kind of like, says who? So anything that time that something shows up is to be able to honor it. And one of the ways that shows up when I'm working individually with in person with people, and when I'm working with couples online or in person, one of the things that I do is I call it the touch of consent, and it's simply using hands. And my teacher, my mentor, Dr. Betty Martin, she talked about we do it in a non-sexual way because there's so much um, associated with sexual things when it comes time. So we start with the hand, touching hands, because it seems non-sexual. And when the hand gets it, the whole body gets it because there's so many nerves here. Our hands are central to what we do in life, in relationship with ourselves and other people. And I talk about it is in a 3-minute window. And this came from from Joseph Kramer, who started sexological body work, which is the body of work that I had my sexual awakening through, and that also that I taught as a professional trainer or teacher. This aspect of in 3 minutes, we're going to do some touch. But and there's 3 questions that are posed. It's what kind of touch would you like? And then, but even that makes an assumption. It's assuming that somebody wants touch. So the first question is, would you like me to touch? And again, it's just the understanding it's hand to hand. Would you like touch? And it gives that person the opportunity to tune in. Actually, I don't want touch today. Great. There's consent at play right there. And it's not about, oh, I wanted to give touch or whatever. It's kind of like, let's find out who is this for. And so to be able to establish, yeah, I want touch. Okay, what kind of touch would you like? And I've had people, I put my timer on because so that people know that there's a container that we're doing this in. And rather than, well, how long is it going to go on? Because the mind starts to go and the body starts to feel unsafe. Here's a container of 3 minutes. Okay, what kind of touch would you like? I want touch. What kind of touch would you like? I don't know. Okay, I'll wait here. You just keep tuning in. You keep listening to yourself. You let me know what kind of touch you want. And I have had people lay there for 3 minutes and they don't know what kind of touch they want. I had a woman who was in her late 60s. She said, I've never had anybody ask me that question before. And so something as simple as that, within a 3-month period, I worked with 2 different couples. One was online, one was in person. Both couples had been together anywhere from 25 to 30 years. I took them through this exercise, and again, it was kind of like, wow, in our years together, we've never asked each other that. And it opened up this level of communication, coming back to yes, it opened up this level of communication within themselves and between each other that they had never experienced before, that totally opened their levels of intimacy in a whole new way. And so when we think about communication, we think we're diving in, we're finding out what do you want? What do our genitals want? How do we move these genitals? What touch do you want? It's kind of like, can we come back into a place of simple, profound essence of being together, self to self? without all that is so laden in our sexuality. And as we start to unpack what is connected to our sexuality, it comes back into this true presence to presence. Here I am, human to human, regardless of what genitals, regardless of what labels we have, presence to presence. Meeting at that place of consent, of, of openness and honesty within that then gets shared. That's where communication happens from the inside out.
I love what you're sharing. And it's so true. A lot of us have no idea what it is that we want or what we desire because we're just so programmed to do what we've been told. And what you're sharing, it's so funny because love and life liberation is it's all about self-discovery, because when you are in touch with yourself and know who you are, that's true freedom because then you are able to operate from an authentic place. And that's actually a real good question. Do you even want to be touched? We take it for granted that, a person would, or I do, but maybe they're not in that space in that moment. So meet each other where you're at. Oh, I love it. Okay, so are there any questions that I didn't ask that you would love to share?
Hmm. Yes, I'm going to bring it back into the aspect of part of my title that you read, and I want to touch on to here. My title is Priestess Domme, Priestess Domme of Wholeness. And you think, what is that? I bring those two because when we think about priestess, right away we think about a religious, spiritual piece of things. When we think about a Dom, a pro Dom, a femdom, um, it's this aspect of, well, there's BDSM, there's domination and submission, there's this dark, these dungeons, this dark piece. And you think, how does priestess and dom, how do those fit together? And for me, it really is about looking at, from various perspectives, our sexuality and our spirituality brought together, the light and what is perceived as dark brought together, that of which has seemed um, the brightest and the lightest and the darkest of the dark. Heaven in heaven, the dungeon and hell dark. It's kind of like, what if they are one and the same? And that, and again, I come from this place of where consent is, where it is in alignment, is this aspect of what if the aspect of domination and submission is actually a reflection of our human experience, because that's what was the opening to me, was realizing in my work with men, in that place of wanting to be let go of control, to be shaped. I realized that's what it is. That's our human journey. Our spiritual journey is the dark night of the soul, is that shedding of that sense of identity, letting go of and giving, it's not even letting go of, but realizing the stripping away that is happening of who we have thought that we were, and coming back into a remembrance that, oh, this is life that's living. Being in the flow is in the spirit, in the energy of things, and realizing that our identity is what's coming away. So for me, I use, and bondage is one of the things that I teach practitioner, I teach people. It really comes back into that aspect of when things are done in a consensual way, whips and chains, feathers and floggers, all of those ways to support us in feeling. And sometimes that those experiences are what help us to, in a consensual way, experience what was experienced in a non-consensual way, which becomes, when we own it and it becomes our choice, there's where the healing comes. And so all of that is, it's my BDSM, my domination and submission, all of that is a part of my healing modality of helping people to come back home into their own bodies, feeling safe, and feeling whole in their sexual freedom and their spiritual wholeness.
I love how you integrate the lights and the darks within ourselves, allowing them to come together as a whole. And what I've learned that is we've been taught that we need to be of love and light. But what about the shades of ourself, that are hiding in the closet, And honestly, to be whole, to be you, I feel that all those pieces need to be incorporated and accepted. It's like the artistic part of you that's in the closet. It's kind of like, come on out. I love you too. You are a part of
Mhm.
me. And it's so interesting because I was thinking while you were speaking too, is I actually have a question on here. It's as a priestess, what kind of abilities or gift differentiate from other professions, therapists or psychologists?
Mm. Mm. In response to that, I would say it really is about tapping into looking at the lens very consciously, very visibly, tapping into and pointing to and taking a stand, not for, but a stand in the spirituality of who we are. And that to me, it speaks to that aspect of things and how to again, instead of compartmentalizing things, well, there's the spiritual part of us. No, that's all that infuses that breath of life. That's what brings us into this human experience. We wait for that first breath when the child is born, and we watch for that last breath when somebody is dying. So that breath of life is what infuses it, that spiritual essence that is here animating this human experience. And so that's where, for me, it's really important that I speak to it, bring the priestess in. And it's not about priestess as in I am authority over. It's no, I'm here to be that place to support you in bringing back you, supporting people in coming back into that remembrance and the experience of their spirituality as their innate essence.
Oh, I love it. I was just thinking about it too. It's kind of like if you can connect to those parts within yourself, it allows you to break through limited preconceived uh, beliefs, that you have been holding on to.
Mhm.
So now it allows you to rewrite your story or your program.
Mhm.
And if you're able to do it with a partner, it actually brings the two of you, it actually strengthens the relationship. Because I was thinking about how many people are we do we really show all parts of ourselves to? Do you know
Mhm.
what I mean? Usually it's easier just to show um the pieces that they're going to be comfortable with, but what happens, there's parts within me that are going to make you uncomfortable. Are you going to be able to hold the space and accept it? And then I was thinking about too, it's kind of like honoring the person as a whole and allowing them to be truly authentic without judgment or
Mhm.
expectations in what you expect them to be. Because to me, that both of them are unconditional love, where you just hold the space for each other. Yeah. Okay. I guess is there anything else you wanted to share? I love this conversation because the truth that you speak, our society as a collective needs to hear it because
Mhm.
it's just been tucked away. There's a lot of shame around it or uncomfortability. And, I was thinking too, like our social media, TV, movies, they all, the way that they show people, uh, what is the word? They market, sex. There's difference between sex versus making love. You know what I mean? Um, And that's what you're teaching people is how to do the second piece because
Mhm.
the first piece is the problem. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. Okay. Okay. So if people are interested in your services, where can they find you?
Great question. Thank you. And I welcome people connecting with me. And again, might be an individual, might be a couple. I even do group programs to be able to create community. So I'm on Facebook, Lorna Gale, and I am on LinkedIn, kind of just starting to get my LinkedIn going again, but you can connect with me there, send me a message. I'm there. And those are the two primary ways. My face or my website right now is just, we're revamping it to bring forward some new offerings. But Facebook for sure, and by email, Lorna@lornagale.com. And I will watch for your email there. So lots of different ways. I also, on Facebook, I have my private Facebook group for women. It's called Reclaiming Eden. You can do Facebook and then the slash I am Reclaiming Eden, and you'll find us there. Come on in. Looking forward to deepening that community there as well.
Well, it's so funny. I was just thinking, paradise on earth. It, and it exists. It's just a matter of, you know, your perception of how you choose to view, or how you choose to create your reality. And
Mm,
when you are in touch with yourself, that actually allows you. It's actually limitless in possibilities. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. I'll put all of your
you're welcome.
information in the inbox in the description area too. So they'll have access to it there too.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Swan, for this amazing opportunity to be with you, and for the beautiful questions that you've asked, to be able that you've opened up so beautifully for our audience to really feel into, to recognize themselves, to sometimes have the light shined on something that they could only feel but couldn't really identify what it was. That can lead them into a deeper relationship and connection to themselves, feeling at home in their own bodies. And how does that ripple out into what I call homes of harmony and relationships? So thank you so much for this time together today.
Same here. I really enjoyed connecting with you. The work that you do is so much needed today, and I'm sure with each person that you work with, it ripples out not just with themselves and their partner, but with each person that they interact with, and it really does start with me, and then go from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm, hmm. And as we come to a close, I want to encourage people. Remember that storyline, that trajectory, that as the main character is moving along their story, there are all kinds of those challenges that happen, the blind side, and all of the conflicted pieces, that all of those things that happen. And at some point, things start to make sense. To look at a movie, when you get to the point, it's kind of like, oh, now I see how that fit in. Now I see the role that played, or that foreshadowing that we didn't see it. So to be able to appreciate that everything that has come along to this point has played a perfect role, and that those pebbles that were dropped along the way, that now as you are coming into this place of healing and ready to have a different experience, the invitation is to get excited when shame shows up, because it shows where you're at one of those pebbles that you're ready to open and reclaim the
Yeah, I
gold and
love
the
your
energy that's
story.
in.
It's ever so whenever I come across something that I'm struggling with, I'm just gonna think of a pebble. I'm
There
at
you
a
go.
pebble. I'm just gonna take a look at it and
Yeah,
honor it.
yeah.
Such a beautiful way to look at it. Yeah, and I was just thinking about it too. It's kind of like to know yourself is to really truly be free. Now that is real liberation.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
you're coming from a place of empowerment and not need. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I'm going to I love language arts. That's been my major, and poetry flows. Like, just words have been one of my superpowers, the gifts that I've been given. That word empower, we use it so often that when I look at the prefix of M, it means it's within. So it's not about giving power to, it's helping someone to recognize, remembering the power that is within already. So
Yes.
when we are doing this whole sexual thing, we think about getting naked. we're getting naked of those stories and ideas that made us think we were outside, that the wholeness wasn't here already. Check, I'm done.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Okay. So everything will, yeah, I love it. And I was thinking about too, I would love to invite you back. Maybe we could do a part two.
I would love that. I would love that.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and, thank you so much for everything. I learned a lot, and hopefully all of the viewers and listeners will feel the same. And if they have any questions, feel free to reach out to both of us. And all of
Sounds
the
perfect.
information will be in the description box.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Swan.
A pleasure. Take care, okay?
You bet. Bye for now, folks.